to be here. And just a quick story. Yeah, I've spoken in many places. I've spoken, obviously, all over the US. I've spoken in Johannesburg. I had the opportunity to do that. It was a 15-hour flight, very long flight. Spoken in Europe. So this is an honor for me. Um, Little history, that you may not know is that a lot of African Americans, Black people in America, especially baby boomers, there's this sense that a group of us feel like we're mostly Native American. Like that is like we have so much Native American blood that we could literally be Native American. But I used to always think, I don't think that's true. I would always argue with my mother at play. I don't feel like that's a thing. Yes, yes, we are. We're mostly. I'm like, I don't think so. So I waited and wait for years and years. Like, how can I prove that this isn't true? So finally the ancestry.com comes out. And I was like, I'm gonna take this test and I'm just gonna see. So we see, and I'm basically more Russian than Native American, which is zero. But what I am is 50% Nigerian. So it's an honor to work with a group that's based in Nigeria, has origins in Nigeria, although you're clearly global at this point. But yeah, so I feel that connection. So so thank you very much for having me. Today I am going to be talking about quality management and learning and development. It's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Why, though, is the question. I don't know. It has been something. Yeah, I wrote a book on storytelling called Story Training. And so I talk a lot about that as well. I have those two topics. But I like to say I picked storytelling, but quality management picked me. You know, it was a topic that um, plagued me for years and years and years, the review cycle and waiting on that, waiting for people to just randomly decide we like this and we don't like that because there were no standards. There was nothing to try to achieve to. I was just going based off my education and my experience. And so the criticism feels personal because it's coming from me. It is personal. It wasn't like they said, here's the standard, you didn't meet it, you failed. That's not what's happening. So I thought, when I first got introduced to quality management, I worked in tech support many years ago, my first career. And I remember it was software that we were supporting. And so we used quality management principles behind it. And so as I got into e-learning development, I thought, can we borrow from that industry and apply to what we do? There's a whole industry called editing. We write all these workbooks, no one looks at them but us. Typically, some groups have functions within them, but usually it's just us. And then there's people getting whole degrees in software quality management. And we just have 3 o'clock in the morning going over stuff over and over again to see whether or not it's broken or not. And with no real strategy other than looking at it repeatedly. So I thought, nearly every problem we have in learning and development has been answered by another industry. There are really no mysteries. It's just us being able to go and look at those other fields and see what can we borrow from them. What what can we do in order to improve our practice and our knowledge and our field? And that's what I started doing. That's what I started doing. I started looking at the field of quality management and trying to discover ways that there are inroads so that we could be more proactive. And I think that's really the distinguishing factor there. You can obviously go online and search for checklist all day, and you'll see e-learning checklist. I mean, you'll see all those things. But if you're anything like me, I say I have a template graveyard. All these good intentions that are just stored in my folder. It's funny how I would say, I need a checklist. So I would go and I would make a checklist. And then a year later, I would say, I need a checklist. Then I would go and make a checklist and I would try to save it. And it would be like, this file already exists. And I would go, oh, I did this a year ago. I did this a year ago and I ignored it. I didn't do anything with it. And I would spend hours making these lists. And through this process, I learned that one of the reasons was because it wasn't attached to something bigger. It wasn't attached to any philosophies or any principles. It was just look at it over and over again, but now use a checklist, which is not helpful in any way. So I thought this is bigger than a checklist. And actually, when I started writing the book, it was supposed to be just the best checklist ever. And I started writing it and thought, this isn't right. Something's missing. And it was that thing that that checklist is supposed to support. All tools that we create, all tools are supposed to support something bigger. It's a tool. It's supposed to be used to support something. And if it's just a tool with nothing to support, then it will get left by the wayside. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is about the system that would be built in order to have that checklist supported. So that's what this is all about. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So a lot of this here is to support the book, ultimately. And everything that we're talking about is in the book, but there are certain insights and things I want to share that happen beyond the book. That's the thing about writing a book, is that the book is almost a snapshot in time of what you know, but you don't really understand what's happening until you start talking about it. You start talking about it, you start sharing it with people. And I'm talking about it for years before the book. But there's so many things that I have been able to coalesce and put together in my mind after talking to people who are using this already. And telling me this is the roadblock, this is what we've done, this is how we've managed it before. There are definitely a lot of organizations who do use quality management principles already, and many of them have whole departments. I'm going to ask you in the chat, tell me whether or not if you work in L&D, do you have a function to say yes, no, or maybe, kind of, that is dedicated to learning and development? Not learning development, quality management. Dedicated, meaning that is their job. When they sit there and they punch into work, that is what they do. Or is it you who is just doing your own work? So say, yes, we do. No. Now, when I first started asking that question, I expected everyone to say no. That's not true. Certain organizations have that, which is someone shouting, no, we don't. And, it really is almost, I'll say almost, it isn't fair that we're in this situation. It's not fair because, it's what we're doing, especially if you're in e-learning. Well, and I would say any part, but we're creating products. These are products, whether or not it's an e-learning module or it's a learning experience or it's a workbook or a manual or a reference guide, that is a product. And every product should have a process that it goes through to check for quality, and it should have standards by which you're checking against every single thing that we produce. And sometimes I don't think we don't look at them as products, but they are. And so it is problematic that the writing industry has a whole editing industry to support it. The software industry has a whole discipline to support it. You can get a master's in software quality management, but we don't. And we're not far behind as far as the volume in which we produce and the experiences that we produce. I know that a lot of people will say we have peer review. That's good. The problem is, the challenge. The challenge with peer review is that someone else just looking at it does not a quality management system make. It is having those guidelines that they're checking against, and having a flexible system that they can work with, not just another human processing what you already processed. But that goes a long way to you just doing it. There's a reason why it's hard for us to find our own errors. And one of the reasons is that um, when when someone else reads our work for the first time, they're checking for understanding. Like they're trying to make it make sense. So they're going to find mistakes and they're going to find errors. You won't necessarily. Some people are blessed and can do it. They can touch a manual and be like, there's a comma missing on page 6. Like, how in the world did you do that? So some people can do that and bless them for it. But for most of us, because it already makes sense to us and we're not checking for understanding anymore, that is why it is difficult for us to see those errors. Can't see them. Now, so again, some people can. I'm not one of those people because I do struggle to find errors that are right in front of me. But this, again, is not just about errors. This is about setting guidelines and standards for you to make sure that the team can compare themselves against to know that they are creating a quality experience. Regardless of what you do, you're still going to have the searching for errors. You're still going to be in that situation. However, it makes it a lot easier if you have some systems in place and then you can devote some time to the quality piece and following the guidelines and then some other time to looking for those spaces. I don't know how many of you tell me in the chat, how many of you develop e-learning? Say yes in the chat. Yes, 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 if you develop e-learning, and yes, yes. This doesn't happen very often anymore, but in Articulate Studio, it used to do this thing where it would insert extra spaces. You would take the PowerPoint, you would publish it, and everything would be fine, and then a space would appear out of nowhere. And those reviewers, that was the first thing they would see. They get all the content or anything. There's an extra space. And you couldn't really control it because that space wasn't there originally. If you go back, it'll be there. But you didn't put it there. Why is it happening? You don't see that in Storyline very much. But we call them space police. Space police would find it and you'd be under arrest. And it just happens all the time. So so we'll talk about a little bit why that happens. Okay, so my name is Hadiya Nuruddin, as mentioned. I have a couple of degrees, a couple of certifications. One of my degrees is master's is in writing. The other one is in education. I'm a learning strategist, instructional designer. I am a developer, I'm a speaker, and I'm an author as well. And the book that I wrote on it is called Quality Management and Learning and Development. I've been in the industry. This is my 25th year. I entered it in 2020, so been around for a little while. I spent half my career working internal. I guess it's not half and half anymore. It's a little more time external now, a few years. But the beginning of my career until the middle, I worked internally. So, I wrote this from the lens of an internal person, because I do know that when you come from the outside, there's this idea of like, oh, you can do that, Hadiya. You can. I can't, because I am a senior instructional designer at a company. So I wrote it from that perspective as someone who works on the inside, but also for consultants who want that information that they can go support other organizations as well. All right, so first I want to say, I used to ask how many people have a system, and you all have a system. If you didn't have a system, then it would be chaos. Everything you turn out would be just a complete mess. And my joke is always, and if that were true, you would either be fired or promoted. So there is this idea that you have a system. Unfortunately, sometimes the people who are catching the errors are the learners. And they're sort of buried in the LMS. Then we find out, then we fix it. And also, the system is not tied to a greater purpose or greater meaning of who we are in the learning team. But you do have a system. The question is, how robust is that system and whether or not it's formalized? So I want you just on a sheet of paper or in your head or what have you. I want you to give yourself some points and we'll see how formalized your systems are. And then you can tell me in the chat how cool you are. This is not scientific. So don't get into your head. I know my people. I know my learning and development people, and you overthink it. You'll be like, why is that 10 points? And that should be 20. Don't do that to yourself. Don't overthink it. So let's talk about the qualities of a formalized process. And I want you to give yourself some points and we'll talk about what that means. So first and foremost, I give the most points for something that's governed by a quality management mission or goal that we have already decided as an organization. We sat down, we had an offsite, we had coffee, we had muffins, we did that whole thing. And we decided not mission as a team, but quality mission. Like, this is what we do. An example would be we create engaging experiences that mimic what people do on the job. Or, our goal is always to put performance first. Something to that. It's stated. You all know what it is. And if any of you get off track, then your coworker can say, remember, this is our mission. This is who we are. If you have that, give yourself an astounding 50 points, big 50 points. The next one is that you have some sort of guidelines, that you have guidelines to support it. Otherwise, it's just a wish. But you have some guidelines somewhere. I will let a style guide be a part of that. We'll talk about why it's not the greatest thing. But if you have a style guide, that goes a long way to having some guidelines. So I'll let that each by. If you have a style guide or something even more robust than that, give yourself 40 points in addition. The next one is that you have some policies and procedures. What that means is, again, you can have guidelines that say, or a style guide that says all this wonderful, wonderful romantic stuff. But if there's no policies to support it, we'll talk about a little bit what that means later. But if you have them, maybe you have some policies around how long a course should take. Maybe you have some policies around what software, but you have some policies and you have procedures that are documented that you could just hand me and tell me what you do. You all have the same terms in mind. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation before. I have, where I would ask someone, or no, I wouldn't ask someone. I would assume that when I said e-learning, it meant one thing. Like, we all know what e-learning is. It's not. Have a real conversation with some people about it, and you may find out that what you say is e-learning is not what they say is e-learning. Right. So when I say think e-learning, I do think an asynchronous experience that is created in a rapid e-learning tool or something. That's what I would say. Then some people would say, well, what about a college course? A college course that's completely online and has some elements that are synchronous, some are asynchronous, is that e-learning? I don't know. What about a webinar? What are we doing now? This is electronic. Isn't there an E in e-learning? Like, what? What is going on here? Some of these things may be lurking in the minds of the people that you work with. And so I say this because you could very gingerly write a guideline for e-learning and they'll be like, I didn't know you were talking about that. Okay, yes, it says e-learning, but this is not e-learning. This is what? Is a job aid e-learning? Well, it's asynchronous, Adia. It's made off of a computer. I mean, so yeah, this is the type of stuff that you need to uncover when you think about it. If you have those all decided, everybody defines e-learning the same way, give me 30 points. Next is that it's scalable and flexible. The system that you have, if God forbid, some people in your company are let go, or better yet, you grow as an organization, or a merger takes place, you would be able to just stretch or shrink this process. Some reasons where you may not be able to is say, you say, a lot of people would be like, oh, our quality management system is we give it to our receptionist who's really good at that. What? She's just, oh, she has an eagle eye. She can see anything and she can find it. Okay, if she leaves, then what are you going to do? Who's going to have the eagle eye at this point? Huh? Or Sarah, who is, in our organization. Right? So that's an issue. If it is scalable and flexible, give yourself 20 points. Now you have tools and templates. Give yourself 10 points. Tell me in the chat, how many points do you have? Now, this isn't the kind that's going to tell you that you're a unicorn or a butterfly or anything based on your points. Let's see how many points you have. 60. Okay, we got two 60s. So going once, going twice. More 60s. Okay, not quite halfway there, but you probably got either you got some big ticket items or you got some lower ticket items. But this is a good guideline for you to, what I like about this is that, again, it's not scientific, but it does help you sit back and think, wait a minute, what are we doing? What is happening? Because I don't have concerns with people who just say, look, we don't have a quality management system. Leave us alone. Or who say, yeah, we do, but we've all been here for 10 years, so we all know what we're doing. My concern are the people who have no idea what they're doing, no idea whatsoever what's happening, not what you're doing as a professional, but no idea how people are supporting quality. All the environments that I worked in as a professional, we never talked about it. It was just either you're doing a bad job or a good job. I don't know how the people in the cubicles next to me were designing. I don't know what they did in order to ensure quality. Not a single idea. We never discussed it. We just talked about how our subject matter experts would cause us problems and this person's an issue and that, but not what are you doing in order to effectively support the organization. So that's an interesting one. So if we weren't even talking about how we do the good stuff, then you can best believe we weren't necessarily talking about the rest of this. All right, so there's some risk that come into not having a quality management system, and here are some of them. As I'm talking through this in the chat, tell me what are some of the risks, maybe you've run into some of these risks or some of the challenges you've had, because by not having this system, there definitely is something at stake. There's definitely something at stake and something to be lost by not having it. So first, there's a low level risk of operational inefficiencies. Okay, the risks that cause minor inefficiencies to your processes, but they don't significantly impact the outcome. Yeah, all three of us as instructional designers, we don't have anywhere near the same templates. This is a true thing that I've experienced. I mean, we don't even come close to having the same documentation. We don't use the same colors. We don't use anything. We don't have anything at all. So we just we just don't do that. That's an issue. That's an issue because we are compromising the learner experience through that. But is it going to take down an organization? No, it's not. It's not going to take out an organization, but it does bring into question to the rest of the organization of, are you just all independent agents here or are you a team? Like, I don't get it. Typos, fix the typo. It's important. Is it going to, some could cause huge issues. And, but yeah, some formatting issues, accessibility, things like that, using odd colors, and you seem to think that yellow font on white is doable. And I think that is, a sin against all nature. But, it's not going to take down the world, but it is a problem. And then version control is considered a lower level risk, but it really is big level. It really is an issue. I was just looking for a file today. It's like one day before I retire, I will master the art of version control. It is my mission to do so. Maybe my next book will be about version control. It's an issue. And if there's other ways of doing it, if you're all doing it in a different way, then how are people going to find these documents? Like it's an issue. One debate that's an issue here is, we have a file name and it's updated. People start putting their initials, they start putting their date, they start doing that, and they start passing the document around. It's hard to know who looked at what and when, especially if this is posted somewhere. It's posted in SharePoint. People change the name of the file, and now the link is broken. This is an issue. This is a problem. So even sitting down and saying, what are we going to use? Are we going to be using different names? Or are we going to use, yes, exactly, final two, exactly. Are we going to be using different names? And I love it when you give it to a subject matter expert and you get it back, and all of a sudden they have this middle initial that you never heard of. His name is John Thomas. You know about John Thomas, that's it. And then all of a sudden it's JDWT. Who is JDWT? I don't know who that is. It's John Thomas. I wonder if his middle names come from, and why can't he just put JT? Why is his middle name all of a sudden so important to him? This is wild. It was very difficult to come up with to have those version controls. Then you have a moderate level risk. So this is the content and delivery. So this is now affecting the quality of our courses, right? So the risk that affects the accuracy, engagement, and effectiveness, right? So this is when you have a page turner, that's an issue, not engaging. This is maybe something as simple as inconsistent pictures. Inconsistent pictures and whatnot, that could be an issue. Whether some people are using photo images, some people are using clip art. It's wild. So outdated or incorrect content or inadequate design overall. This is also an issue. So that's a moderate risk. The next type of risk, now we're getting up into higher levels of risk here, risks that definitely impact the business, regulatory compliance. So materials that fail to meet requirements, exposing it to risk, that the content is not complete, it doesn't meet the guidelines, it's inaccessible, all types of things come to play here. Ineffective compliance training and failure to measure effectiveness. I definitely have had clients who don't want any quizzes. I've had clients who don't want any interaction at all. And I don't necessarily fault them for that. I just begin to wonder, why is this a class? Why am I here if it is not something that is so important that we want to understand that people know it? So this is a problem that should have been solved way before we got to beta version of the Articulate Storyline course. But we know these things slip through the cracks. But if we don't have a standard that says, actually, no, sir, no, sir, we absolutely need to have some sort of way to assess whether or not people understand this content. And it doesn't even have to be a test. This research shows that practice is an important part of learning. So we want to give them an opportunity to have them some scenarios to practice. That is our standard. That's not just me talking, right? This is our standard, and it's going to be in there. These are the types of discussions that it morphs into rather than, oh, okay, delete. Right? These are the type of discussions we want to begin to have to protect what we've created. And failure to measure effectiveness, even if we have a quiz in there, what do we do with that? What does it mean? What does it mean that Tom failed? John Thomas, let me keep picking on John Thomas. What does it mean that John Thomas failed? Nothing, does it? What does it mean? So we need to understand what that is and how that affects the business. And then finally, there's the big one. Some would say, no, the other business is the big one. But I would say, if we come to the business as an add-on and not a strategic partner, we're not looking like we're not giving strategic partner here, then we put ourselves at a lot of risk here. So if long-term credibility, alignment, overall effectiveness of the function, failure to align with goals, Loss of stakeholder trust. This is huge. This, inconsistent quality throughout. It's no mistake that a lot of our clients feel like what we do is made up witchcraft, like just made up. We're just randomly saying things. We're making projects take longer for fun, I guess, is what they think we're doing. There's no mistake. And I can't say I blame them. And one of the reasons why I can't say I blame them all the time is that, again, if there are three instructional designers and we have three completely different processes, and then the manager, sometimes, I know some of you have worked with managers with no L&D experience. I have a couple of times. Why would I, Jeff, in marketing, feel like you all have some sort of way of doing this work? Why would I feel comfortable knowing that you are all on the same, even in the same department, let alone you're able to take our company to the next level? Why would I feel that way? So us getting it together and being consistent and saying, no, this is the way we do things here. This is important to us. And then protecting that through our quality management system, that helps us go a long way in, getting that seat at the table, but just establishing ourselves as a strategic partner in the company rather than just people who are making pretty PowerPoints. So what does this world look like? So take you through what a quality world could look like. And they've already done it. They have a system, and I know they have a system because they had the audacity to bring a French press to a conference room. I mean, she's got an Infinity Star. These people are living their best life. They're happy. Let's see what kind of world. Let's peer into the type of world that they're living in with this quality management system. So here's a quality world. So in their world, the quality management system supports the team's mission and is reflected in every service that they deliver. It's top of mind. They talk about it in every meeting. They're constantly, your quality management system, it moves in with you. It's a roommate. It's feeding, it's living, it's breathing, it's in the corner, glowering at you the whole time. It's always there. And it's our friend. They've made it a friend. It's a teammate. We're always concerned with it. We're always trying to keep it alive. We're talking to people. We saw that you didn't meet this, your class didn't quite meet the deadline, Sandra. Let's talk about how we can fix that, it's just a part of their life. The documented standard guidelines become integral to the team's identity. One example I like to use a lot is accessibility, right? So it is so important to us as a team. It is part of our identity that everybody gets access to these courses. It's something that we believe in. It is important. They can navigate through them. We're always thinking about it top of mind. It is who we are. And you can take a certain pride in the fact that you've taken that stand as an organization. So that's what they did. That's one of their guidelines, and they're so happy about it. Then you have quality control. We'll talk about the difference between quality assurance and control, because they are different. People use them interchangeably, but they're different. So quality control measures are designed and implemented to protect your system, its outputs, and I can't stress this enough, the people who create them. I mentioned earlier, because I had no guidelines to work against, I was just using my own common sense and education as a designer. So when people complained about it, that was me. Like, don't take it personal. No, it is personal. It's personal because there are no objective guidelines that I'm supposed to be following. It's just me doing stuff. Right? So yeah, I'm gonna take it. So this protects the people in a couple of ways. One, it stops that madness because now you know guidelines that you need to follow. But as a leader in an organization, you now know what you need to get your team. It's not, oh, give us a portfolio. Oh, that's nice. It's these are the guidelines that we follow. Let's talk through them and see how close you are to meeting these guidelines. And then when we try to help people, we try to move them forward. Again, it isn't just this, oh, take this class and be a better designer. It's these are the guidelines that we want to help you meet. And we're going to get you the right support in order to do that. So it protects the people in the system and the products as well. Then there's next, the quality review process is a checkpoint against guidelines. It's a judgment of products and compliance, not people, not the people, compliance and products. So I'm judging this course against guidelines. I'm not judging whether or not you're a good designer. Now, of course, you're not completely off the hook because you did have the guidelines and you didn't follow them. So now we got an issue. Now I need to see you in my office. But now you have the guidelines to say this is what you didn't do. An example would be, again, if I use accessibility, we decided that all courses should have closed caption. We decided that. I saw a course the other day, no closed captioning. What's the deal? Oh, well, it's for the engineering team, and they don't have anyone on their team that needs it. So nope. We decided that all of our courses, we don't have to decide that all the courses do, but that happened a long time ago. We decided that all our courses were going to have this. Why, it needs to happen. Well, there wasn't enough time. Okay, well, you should have come to me as the leader and we could have talked about having time in order to do that, right? These are the discussions you can have now as opposed to just, you didn't do it. Why? Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it? All right. So then the systems efficiency clears the path for innovation, creativity, and growth. Since you're not having little conversations about commas anymore, you can start talking about how we're going to use AI in our organization and what does it mean for our growth. How are we going to go to a more mobile first philosophy or digital first philosophy instead of being just trapped into these discussions about colors? All right, now we're talking about how we're going to move us forward. How are we going to, improve the review process for our subject matter experts to get them through it more expeditiously? These are the type of discussions we could be having now. They're having them and they love them. All right, so this is sort of that slide's in the wrong place. That was supposed to be earlier. Let's keep going. All right, so now I want to talk about what I call the quality stack. So I've been alluding to the system without really saying what's in the system. Now we're going to talk about what's in the system. So this is the quality stack, and it's stacked like this, like a Jenga game, like a bunch of bricks that could fall down at any minute on purpose. I didn't do it to be cute or stylish. I did it because the system will always be fragile. It will always be fragile because a manager leaves, employee leaves, company shrinks, loses direction. We're going to bring everything in-house. We're going to outsource everything. Those types of changes will put this at risk. And so that's why it needs to be cared for and nurtured over time. I'm going to go through these quickly. Now, there's a bunch of stuff I have for you to be able to, at your own leisure, go and look at them. The first one is down at the bottom. It is a class. It is a free, not really a class. It's more of an online tutorial that goes into detail for each one of these. And it's there. It's on my in my Duets education system. And then you can sign up for that. I have another resource for you as well that you don't have to sign up for because you came to this webinar. I'm going to show you that. All right, so let's start with the quality mission. So the quality mission is the foundational statement that defines quality and purpose for your quality management efforts. So that is where it all starts. My editors were like, that should go at the bottom because it's the foundation. No, it goes at the top. It goes at the top because in some cases, you can stop there. You may not need the rest of it. You may sit down and say, this is our mission. We create engaging exercises. And everyone's like, got it, Chief. We've all been working together here for 15 years. And no one has any questions. And everyone's happy with everyone's work. You don't want to overbuild this. You don't want to over-engineer it. Don't want to over-engineer it because the more stable it is, the stronger it will be, but the harder it will be to maintain. All right, so you have your mission and everything's great. And then what happens is that there's a big change in your organization. And now people are interpreting things differently. So I said the mission was engagement. Talk about the world's most nebulous word, engagement. It's so overused and it's so unclear as to what that means. So, unless everyone has the exact same definition of engagement, you need to start building more supports under it so people understand what that means. So, then you have quality planning. Quality planning is okay, we have our mission and this is beautiful, but let's be realistic here. We have a big organization here. I worked at BP for a number of years. Someone decided to do an inventory of how many LMSs we had. Someone decided to do an inventory. By the time it got to North America, there were 140 on that list. So there's a lot. People are just doing. Every department had their own LMS. Looks like every person had their own LMS. I mean, it was wild how many they had. So my point is that we have lots of organizations here. Even if you all fall under the same umbrella, you could have issues around this is retail, this is corporate. They all have different ideas of what learning and development is, let alone quality. So you may decide, you know what, we're not going to pretend like everything we create is going to go through this system. We're going to start with corporate. Retail is its own animal. It's confusing, going through changes, but corporate is pretty stable. So we have human resources courses, we have safety courses, compliance courses, all of that goes through corporate learning. So that's what we're going to work on. Now, once we have this stable, first of all, we need to be thinking or assuming ahead of time that we're going to increase this. Once we have this stable, then we're going to go to other places as well. We're going to do other things. That's important. But for now, we're just going to focus on corporate, right? So we have our mission, and our mission is for corporate right now, right? You can even slice it thinner and be like, Tammy, it's just all your courses. All right, so now we have that. So next is the guidelines. Okay, so we decided we have this mission for engagement. We're only going to focus on corporate learning for now. And then for quality assurance, those are the guidelines. It assures quality, right? So those are the guidelines here. And so what we're thinking of here is one, all the guidelines that ensure engagement. Yes, that's going to be tough to get through. You're going to have to talk to your team. What does that mean? Does it mean, it shouldn't mean an interaction every 5 slides. I mean, none of that should happen. But I'll give one example that I use a lot. It's called, I'll write it in the chat. This guy named David Merrill has this thing called the first principles of instruction. Principles of instruction. And what he did was he went through and looked at all of the theories of what makes a person learn or what encourages learning. And he saw what they all had in common and came up with 5 principles, right? These first principles, they sort of say that, you need to have demonstration, you need to provide practice, it should be problem-centered, things like that. So you could decide as a group, those are our guidelines. We're going to break them down, of course, but those are the guidelines that we want to follow. And so all your guidelines can be based on that, right? So, very good. Those first principles of instruction, yeah. So make guidelines out of those because then they're research-based. You're not just settling scores and be like, no one can use a serial comma ever again. If this is research-based guidelines, always focus on that. Again, that will quell some of the arguments of, I don't like that. That's important, right? So that's what those are. That's a good example of a starting place for guidelines, right? Next, you have quality control. So quality control, again, it's very literal, controls quality. A guideline is just a wish unless you make room and support learners as they try to make the guideline. So for example, if something is, if I look at that and say that everything we do is going to be problem-centered, that's engaging because that's one of the first principles of instruction. That's a guideline. And now we need some policies to help our instructional designers try to make that happen. So one example could be, say you've decided that in order for this to occur, the first discussion that you have with your subject matter expert has to be about the problems that they're solving. And that sounds obvious, but you can get pretty far down the line without having a problem, and then you're just making up scenarios. If you have those scenarios ahead of time, then you can always be refining them and thinking, I'm just making this up of what you may say. So if that's true, then what we may do is come up with some templates, interview templates, for you to sit down with your subject matter expert and write down all those things that we think would make good problems for the learning, right? So that is what that is. That's quality control, right? That is what that is. It's not a checklist. That is quality control because it's something that supports the guidelines that we're making, right? It could also be policies. When someone swoops in and says, you know what, I know this is not ideal, but we need this course in 2 weeks. Okay, no, you know, easier said than done, I know. But our guideline, in order to be met, has to follow these policies, and our policies prohibit that idea that they'll be able to get through in 2 weeks. That's not a thing. They have to go through these steps, right? So that's where you have now this consistent idea. It's not just we don't want to do it, we can't do it, because they, you know. But you now have something documented and processed. All right. And then quality review. Quality review is probably going to be the most complicated of all of them. That's not true. It's going to be very complicated, more complicated than you think, because there's the regular reviews that still has to happen. That's still going to occur. There's no way around that. But this one would be, where are the guidelines? Let's compare what we're seeing against the guidelines. That's a challenge, right? Say one of your guidelines is around font size. I mean, I've seen some really interesting stuff around font size. There's no, your subject matter expert is probably not going to be able to tell whether that is 10-point font or 12-point font. Like, they're not. However, your peer may be able to go into the file and go, oh, this is not the right size font, right? So you're going to have to decide who looks at what and who's going to review. But this is what I can stress, that sometimes just knowing what to do goes a long way. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a review, saying that if you give me those guidelines ahead of time and give me the policies that support them, you'll be surprised how wonderful the course will be without someone checking it. So I do advocate, maybe you put the system in place first, get everybody used to it, and then build a review process around it. All right, so there's a couple of different levels that people can find themselves at. There is, this is either you personally or your team. Level 1 is more reactive quality management. That's, we find an error, then we fix it. It's the checklist at the end. Let's go through the course, see what happened. That's reactive, right? Or even worse, a learner sees an error, finds a problem, then they go after that. Level 2. So level 2 is more checklist driven. It is, we're waiting at the end. All that matters is what's in this checklist. That's what we're looking for. The checklist was always odd to me anyway, because it's like, is punctuation correct? Where? Like in the whole thing, the whole course? And if it's not correct, how do I record when and where and what's happening with it? Right? So it's always been an odd thing. So coming up with ways to make it easier, it's going to have to be some legwork on your behalf. All of this is. Guideline supported quality management. So the next one is, we have some guidelines, but it's really just us with a style guide who decided that these are what the guidelines should be, did a little research, This is what we think is best. Have at it. Level 4 is system driven. That is that we have this system in place. We use it when we need to use it, but it's in place and it's good and it's solid. But we use it when we need to use it, and it comes up every now and then. And then the final one is the highest level, where again it's that team I showed you earlier, where the culture driven quality management so important, in that it is part of everything we do. We talk about it all the time. We talk about it in every meeting. We love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. So that's level 5 of quality management. So this is what I want to show you right quick. Going to move this out the way, and I'm going to stop sharing right quick because I want to share something else. And first I'm going to put it in the chat. So here is another link I want to share with you, where I have nearly all the resources I have available connected to a RISE course. Let's see here. I have mixed feelings about RISE. However, it does do this well. Right? It pulls all these sort of resources together. Right? All right. So in here, first I have that quality stack. And what I have for you here is just basically you're able to walk through it step by step. All right, and then down below, I have these inputs and outputs, each part of the system there. What would go into it? What is the result? How does that feed the next part? And it goes around and around and around and around. So that's what that is. The next one I just want to show you right quick. What this is called troubleshooting with quality management. And let me show you. I'm going to make it large. Hopefully you'll still be able to see it here. And what this is just a little fun course I put together in Storyline. And what you do is you click to again. Oops, what happened? I clicked the wrong thing. I clicked myself. I'm scared to click the X. All right, so to begin. Scared of X's. All right, so what this is a bunch of sort of case studies and short ones, and you have to consider which one will this most likely be addressed in. So this first one is an L&D team repeatedly releases e-learning modules with errors missed during production. These errors often result in multiple iterations post-launch, frustrating stakeholders and learners alike. In which layer may this issue most likely be addressed? So I'm going to open the chat. You tell me which layer, which one should I click on? You think this is a quality mission problem, a planning problem, quality assurance, control, or review? So we're talking missed errors. Tell me in the chat, which one do you think it is? Of course, you're probably already there and you clicked on it and you found the answer, but tell me what you think. Any ideas? Anyone? What do you think? Quality review, right? So let's see. Is it quality assurance? Almost someone's quality assurance. Let's go ahead and take a look. Oh no, she's disappointed. It's not you. She's just hurt. Let's go to quality review. All right. Yep, it's quality review issue. She's happy. She's happy. All right. So you may think, again, I know my L&D people. You'll think, well, why aren't the other ones correct? I want to know why. All right. So click on see other options and it will tell you why the other ones aren't likely correct. Now, again, know that the problem could have happened anywhere. It could have happened anywhere, but this is where it most likely occurred. So this will tell you as you go through each one of these why it may not be, right? So Q&A sets, it's not quality assurance. So our Q&A sets guidelines, no scenario. The scenario involves verifying adherence to those guidelines during the review stage. Quality planning, the review process occurs after planning. So the problem lies in execution. right? So this just gives you a way. Go ahead and continue. And the names are over here on the side, so you can sort of go, oh, okay, which one is near and dear to your heart that you may be interested in learning about. All right. All right, so that's something for you to do in your spare time, which I'm sure you have. All right, and then anything on here? Nope. Next one is quality inventory. All right, so a minute ago I went through those steps, those types, those levels, and you didn't think I'd trust you to be objective enough to pick a level. No, of course not. Instead, this is one of those sort of quizzes where you type in the number of you sort of. Well, I'll just show you. Why am I trying to explain to you? There you go. So here's a statement, and you type whether or not it's true, untrue, or what it is. You type that in, and then it will tell you based on the probably overly complicated math problem I have on the other side. It will tell you what stage you're in. So I'm just gonna, and it just the numbers here don't correspond with the level, right? So if you do 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, that doesn't mean you're going to get level 3, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to randomly. You can only, if you try to type 5, it won't work. It'll go back. Don't you love variables and storyline? All right, I'm going to keep going here. Five pages here. And there's a as far as whether or not it's a team, you can decide whether or not this is just going to be for you. It's going to be for you. And this would be interesting if you sat with your team in a big conference room and you sort of debated where you were. And this would be really telling for you of where you all are. Sorry, I have a million fans in my faces. That's why I'm coughing. And it tells me I am at level 3, my team. So we're guideline supported quality management. And to learn more, you click here. Right. And it tells you, quality is a shared expectation, gives you a definition of what that is. And you go, what about the other ones? Because again, I know L&D people. I want to know the other ones are. These learn mores are also active, even though they're gray. You can click and see what those are. Then you go, okay, well, so what? So what? As you're going through, by the way, there is this ratings key button up here where you can, it will give you some insight into what it means because the people in the room will debate with you. Now, wait a minute now, what about true and untrue? All right, so there's that. And then this right here, there's something called the levels guide. And what the levels guide will do, it will explain way more detail each of the levels and then tell you how to get to the next level. All right. All right, so that's what that is. And then finally here, these are all the quality management courses. There's the quality stack, but there's 2 more. This one covers mission and this one covers planning. And then there'll be others that will come through. These 2 are free. And then other quality management resources. There is the study guide for the book. There's another handout. And then reflection questions. If you're not ready to put them through the Cosmo, I call it BuzzFeed quiz or whatever, of what level, and you feel like they'll be all mad about it, you can walk through these reflection questions first, is an idea of what you can do. And then there's a glossary here. All right, so definitely take advantage of these resources. I am going to go back and share something right quick. Where's it at? The PowerPoint, yeah. It's one final concept I want to share with you, and that is the idea that even if you have all of these, it will still be rocky. It will still be unstable. And the reason why it will be unstable is the slides are even more robust version of the slides are on the last page of that website. So you'll be able to see all that. Is that you need the quality first mindset needs to be present. Because if you're thinking, if this can occur, if this can happen, then that's leaving that room for doubt. So I would say that you need that belief that the goal is not only to design and develop learning experiences, but to create quality products and to prioritize doing so over everything else. Over everything else. So quality first mindset. Without that, then I would say that the Jenga, the tower will remain unstable. So something to think about. And also want to stress too that this is a change management issue. Change management issue is what this is. Don't forget that. Don't lose sight of that. Assume everyone wants quality. When you get resistance, if you try to be the change champion, you do not assume that people don't want it. They're lazy. They just don't want to give up. Don't assume it. Always assume that they want quality. This is a change management issue. And always embrace my favorite quote about change management. And that is, people don't fear change, they fear loss. So if you're getting resistant, and this is true even in your L&D work, think about what people are losing with this change. What are they losing? Or what do they think they're losing? In some cases, they are really losing it and they don't want to lose it. So you have to navigate that. But in this, there could be a loss of autonomy, control, lots of things people may perceive they are losing. Time, the fact that they feel like they got to start over again when they were doing their job just fine. Now they have to do all this for what? Because you went to a conference and some lady talked about it. This is the type of resistance you may get. But remember, think, what are they losing? What do they feel like they're losing as a result of this? So keep that in mind. So this is the stuff. The book is here. You have the access to these as well. So yeah. Right. And then these are the courses that are out there. Then my Duets Education website that you can take a look at. Quality with a Cause, journey, and mapping your journey, which are the first two steps. First two parts of the stack. Then I like to end with my favorite quote about this topic. And that is 85% of the reasons for failure are deficiencies in the systems and process rather than the employee. The role of management is to change the process rather than badgering individuals to do better. So what we are involved in, these are systems we are working within. And it is our duty to go through and make it as efficient as possible so that people can do their best work. I will say this, quality management systems can be built from the ground up, but they can only be sustained from the top down. So you can do everything you can, and you could be the champion, and you can come up with all the checklists in the world. But if management does not support it and does not bring it up and hold people accountable to it, not just inside the organization, inside your team, but outside your team, then it will go off to the template graveyard, unfortunately. All right. I am done. That's just a link to my link tree. Then there's my other book out there. You can see I also incorporate storytelling in this as well. So storytelling is a big part of what I do, but always talking about quality management as well. All right.